cheap ticket. The tickets were very affordable. They was on like StubHub. Ja was selling more records than Jay-Z.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't start any of these altercations.
I would buy Rose, he jokes. He brags to everyone that Ja sold more records than Jay at his peak. And he uses a chilly term to set the tone. None of these altercations involve me. We will only use 50's own words to settle this dispute tonight. Loyalty lines, guesses, summaries, close reunions, purposeful silence, and the scoreboard rule that renders you useless are all prohibited. He doesn't start off boasting or listing how many bodies he has. He opens faithfully. His choice of Fat Joe as the first name in the frame is not intended to spread rumors, but rather to show how alliances influence the atmosphere of a room before anyone speaks.
So my whole beef with Fat Joe was really his loyalty.
It has a map on it. It implies that the rules governing interaction are not arbitrary. When the cameras are not rolling, people talk about who stands where and how that pose looks. Right now, he isn't performing. He is pointing to circuitry that creates the moment. Silence itself can be emotion with the correct circuitry. He does not act as though the initial phase was neutral, but from the beginning to the present, he claims the basis was skewed. He said that the room already belonged to someone else and that their relationships would influence his actions.
The entire beginning of my career, I was up against the leverage of Murder Inc. and that energy already created relationships that I didn't people because they had already dealt with.
These reports are on the climate. He's not just listing a competitor crew. He's referring to the tension that arises when you enter a space where individuals have already exchanged favors and called. Even saying hello feels like a headline in such a situation. Nor were these linkages small or isolated. According to Urban, they have numerous relationships. That sentence isn't funny. It's a line of demarcation. When more than one person is confined, each handshake becomes an experiment. Additionally, every interaction, function, and program turns into a read on your actual spouse. In that type of grid, a name can be spoken to activate a fuse. His next move is therefore absurd. Discipline as opposed to assault. He clarifies, after a crucial discussion, he didn't want the opposing side to feel as though they were purchasing a problem. So he kept the name a secret, a deliberate choice to omit any words, without any subliminals or theatricals.
When I left that meeting, I didn't want him to feel like he bought a problem, so I wouldn't say anything about Ja Rule.
Yes, I did save the last part. It sounds like a shrug even though it's a procedure. He's demonstrating the importance of timing in a society that prizes the loudest swing. Refusing to give your opponent a free headline is strong enough. It has a powerful effect to leave the audience wondering why you didn't use the name they anticipate hearing. Silence can also be a stage. And as everyone else feels it, he stands comfortably in the air. It goes without saying that such a circumstance calls for another label, the simple one that sticks to you when you don't wince. He knows what word they're using. They treat me like a bully. He doesn't dispute the term. He doesn't beg for pardon. Like the silence earlier, he simply ignores it. It's the same through line. Instruction, the introduction's authority. Regulation of the temperature. Authority over when a name was last uttered aloud. Chapter 1 is easy to understand if you resolve these issues. Even before the first verse is revealed, the battlefield is packed. There are a lot of people who have already made calls, leveraged, and shown loyalty. In that case, restraint is placement rather than passivity. Regardless of who he acknowledges, who he doesn't, and whether he decides to talk at all, he is making the initial move where it matters. The constant rumor was the one that would have placed two names close to each other on a single stage. What would happen if the city's most important event turned into a handshake, if silence and loyalty were the first steps? His remark and the rumor are both audible. You point to someone else's bridge rather than making physical contact. Then, as he continues to stress another man's relationship over his own, he directly addresses the topic of Summer Jam. The rumors seem too enormous to be true each time. 50 and Jay were rumored to be going out together at Summer Jam, the one night in New York where rap politics would be transformed into a play, according to rumors. When answering the question, he doesn't hold back.
There was a rumor this year, Summer Jam, that Fat Joe
wanted to bring out you and Ja Rule.
His next move is classic control. He doesn't start negotiating with the past or chasing the optics, nor does he deny the rumor. He provides it to the individual who requested it and the connection that would enable it from himself. He seems to be thinking about his relationship with Joe and John. One breath, the whole temperature. His behavior, his inclination, his connection. Additionally, 50 need not be vague about it. He frankly admits his purpose. He wants to think back on his connection with John. Therefore, you should avoid doing that. Observe how long it takes for them to reply. Rewriting history is not urgently needed. Don't feel pressured to write a news article. He allows the conversation to continue where it began on someone else's bridge. It's not apathy. It's positioning. It won't be because 50 went on the radio to call for symmetry that a truce is ever announced in public. Because they believe the stage can handle the responsibility, someone else with connections to both sides will take over. Nevertheless, the silence captures the seriousness of what it would entail. Summer Jam is a significant event. It's a sign. Old blood warns industry and the metropolis that bright lights can make things chilly. 50 doesn't mean the concept is doomed. It simply isn't compatible with him. It is a significant rejection. It provides him leverage and keeps the others under pressure. Humans can also read this. On a stage, consensus is equivalent to listening to a story. It writes itself. There are two men in the same space. New York roars. The camera shifts to legends, but some people enjoy that story. 50 does more procedures. He keeps stressing agency. Is there anyone interested in it? Who is inquiring? Who is involved? Marking the components and leaving them in their current locations until the parts line up is the best course of action. As a result, the rumor did not become a show. No handshake, no embrace, no click teasing on stage. Instead, they recalled the 1950s, when they first set up the board before determining if the play was necessary. He feared Jaw, but against whom was he truly fighting? 50 draws a clear and sudden separation. The adversary was not a human. It felt like something. He tilts the frame at this point. He divides the competition in half without naming any opponents, both the actual and imagined rivals. Actually, it was never a competitor. He doesn't leave the concept open-ended. He defines it right away. The truth is that it was a person who is a rival with regard to perception. He goes on to explain how that misunderstanding persisted. The misunderstanding wasn't caused by other artists continuing to make blunders since the other guy won the room. He maintained his impression of the artist in spite of his mistakes. Now take a moment to think about that. The skill of a rival in the 1950s was failing to recognize the danger. It's the way he lives. DJs, CEOs, artists, and headlines may make people look more successful than they actually are without requiring them to win in real time. The opponent's poor decisions provide them a brand narrative and put them above the scoreboard. You don't have to lose even if the public continues to choose your opponent over you. His earlier quiet was therefore a conscious decision rather than an act of pride. You don't feed this balloon that floats over the city if perception is the true adversary. Not even a wave is given. You force perception to earn its breath by not naming it. However, perspective takes time to develop. Joe was no longer merely a shadow or a rumor. He was moving. He managed the airways. The numbers were noisy. And 50 doesn't change the past. He does not romanticize the scale, even when he admits it.
There. They was selling more.
That sentence smacks like a stamp when it is clipped. Without giving away the plot, it acknowledges the pinnacle. They were making more sales. The tension from earlier times. Not a surrender, but a snapshot. Because the stakes are high, it's a tactic to keep them high without revealing what's important right now. The rhythm of the entire feud can be understood by making a distinction between perceived and real rivalry. That explains how he might humiliate with a single move after months of rejecting the bait. That was why he was never going to be the driving force for a shared stage rumor. It also clarifies the more detached math he employs when discussing victories and defeats. People will tell you that he lost. This is contradicted by statistics, touring base, attention, and ticket demand. And that is the most heinous aspect of his thinking. Every headline doesn't bother him. Not every story is corrected by him. He goes around them after letting them stack in a hallway like empty boxes. The story is irrelevant if its core remains unchanged. His use of humor also makes sense in this context. Laughing in the middle of a disagreement is not detached. Supremacy. Jokes have the power to alter people's opinions. Without a single punch being delivered, the audience's reaction is audible, and the opponent immediately feels smaller. So he can keep the temperature down when the city wants a performance. If indignation is the food source for the perception beast, then starving it makes it a weapon. He therefore takes his time to establish his innocence when someone accuses him of being the bully. He maintains his attention where it is most beneficial. Is the base still in existence? Is the machine still moving? The only question worth answering is that one. He responds to it right away in an unquestionable manner. Furthermore, none of these fights were initiated by me. If the seats are still full, it doesn't matter how you lost, the scoreboard rule or the momentum rule. He continues returning to the same notion after the noise has stopped. Momentum, not initial strikes or provocation. He does not present himself as the aggressor while discussing pressure and conflict. While others respond to the moves, he presents himself as the one making progress.
They're picking a reason to go at the kid because he keep winning.
Right.
There's nobody that's gonna sit in that seat and not have conflict. Not have artists uncomfortable with you being in that seat, because it is what it is.
It sounds more like a recurring regulation than a one-time defense. If you win long enough, the room will find a reason to remove you from the chair. It will also depend on how he uses that seat. It is an objective rather than merely a place on a chart. Its friction affects whoever is within. He keeps going back to the one metric he respects when stories begin designating victors and losers. Do you remain seated? You don't hear him foaming at the mouth because of this. You listen to him classify. For many artists, the seat and velocity are both uncomfortable. Without turning to conspiracies, the three can be used to explain the differences. The pressure is explained by the position. Someone will write a reason to hit you if you continue to move, occupy space, and be the center of gravity. In this kind of framing, self-control becomes a weapon. If anger is an amplifier and attention is worth money, then not giving your leverage is giving your opponent a free headline. Refusing to reveal one's identity is a show of self-control rather than timidity. You risk starting a fire that doesn't burn you if you speak too quickly. If you want the desired heat to penetrate the environment, say it when it matters. He depersonalizes the conflict without avoidance, which is another thing you may observe. He doesn't reduce a narrative to a single man and one grievance. At the system level, he maintains it that way, with a seat that everyone desires, a frustrating momentum, and a company that puts comfort first. That holds true for a number of beefs. It is a rule that has applied each time he has experienced it. If you pay close attention, it turns into a mental checklist that he crosses off before acting. Am I still moving to start? Second, are they responding to me or to the motion? Third, is there anything else I can do besides keeping the seat if it's the issue? That has a hint of roughness. The best course of action is to keep the posture and handle the problem as if it were a weather-related issue. You are not argued with by rain. You're going to avoid it. That's how his composure appears. A man who has already come to terms with the fact that storms are inevitable and has established a proper kind of agreement. His lack of haste for dramatic reconciliations can also be explained by that acceptance. The physics is not changed by a real optics stage. With new faces, tomorrow's headline will resemble yesterday's if seats and momentum are the problems. Control the temperature rather than posing for a picture that guarantees a piece you won't use. When the room persists on keeping score, counting diss tracks, discussing online triumphs, and chasing the dopamine of a hot take, he leaves the comment area and heads back to the building where the real numbers are kept. He isn't evasive about it later. When he summarizes the rule in a single sentence, it's hard to argue with him. You're listening to governance here, not rumors. Along with temperature and limitation, he also controls momentum and tempo, time and perception. Within those three, every decision is decided. He is intentionally early. He will intentionally be late. A competitor is already comparing it to another scoreboard by the time he attempts to prove something with a headline. Blog polls or Twitter accolades are not the basis. Are people still purchasing tickets? When the lights go out, who is there? When singing the hooks, who still raises both hands in the air? Because the throne wouldn't move without the bass. This leads to the frequently cited term, the scoreboard rule. By posing the one crucial question, he reduces you to a trick of perception in 30 seconds. He doesn't alter plots or point at charts. He recounts an incident involving a dialogue. It is straightforward, uninteresting, and disastrous for any headline that reads, "You took an L."
I said, they said you lost to Pusha T.
The question that ends the argument is then dropped by him. What did you lose then? The only thing that mattered on tour was how he was welcomed. And he remains silent. He doesn't just joke around. He makes the reasoning simple enough for everyone to use at home.
You see what I'm saying? Like whenever you say you lost something, he said, what exactly did you lose?
He then specifically identifies the metric, the one you can't fake with hashtags or remarks. It won't cost you anything to back off. Not a single Drake fan is currently refusing to attend his concert. The rule is that nothing is lost if the base remains. It's diagnostic, not dismissive. Combat did not alter the outcome of the fight if your core was visible. He has the luxury of patience as a result. How does he manage to laugh at provocations? What makes his anger as steady as the weather? An arena doesn't sell out because of outrage. The base does. Everything we've heard so far falls under that rule. The company must be able to whisper. Rivals may adopt a position. 3 times a week, comment sections have the chance to declare winners. However, the seed is still there if the base is. The same laws of physics still hold true if the seed stays in place. Fire is pulled by momentum. Temperature is controlled by restraint. Perception depends on timing. It also explains why some humiliations are more memorable to the public than amusing ones. Perception is significantly altered by the kind that you mentally repeat each time you hear a competitor's name. If perception is the enemy, jokes can be a weapon. They are sticky and spread easily. Rather than quarreling, they tilt. When he is referred to as a bullet, he cannot recoil according to the same law. Styles don't change labels. The base does. In actuality, the branding reinforces the perception that his fans already have of him. Armored and unconcerned. He's creating the word, not avoiding it. It's easy to overlook the scoreboard rule's last benefit. It safeguards longevity. You will burn yourself attempting to ride every wave if you evaluate yourself based on comment waves. You can endure the weather if you measure yourself by your basis. It is a metric for veterans. Web pages come and go, but tales can endure for decades thanks to the same reasoning. He then changes the topic back to a question when someone wants a scathing analysis of who won a beef this week while the camera is trained on him. What did you lose? If the question remains unanswered, the story remains yours. But he will also offer you the cost of staying in that role. Consequences that don't happen on screen, activities that don't occur on screen, and an apparent over-preparedness until you remember where it all started. After that, the techniques and outcomes are displayed, along with the explanations for why the backstage pressure may exceed that of any disc. The most basic version of this story involves 2 individuals trading records. For example, you can find the true version on the phone. Pressure, placement, and phone calls that never reached a deadline. He doesn't act as though there won't be any repercussions when the hosts inquire about the cost of the meat. All he has to do is identify the type that truly appears. You get what I mean, though, if there's a lawsuit there from someone who has a grudge, such as the fact that you disagree with Buster, Ja Rule, and Fat Joe. Are you the subject of any lawsuits? No, nothing. Extras like behind-the-scenes videos are always offered. The remaining portions are intentionally left open-ended. However, the outline can be filled in. Chapter 6 examines what happens when relationships become lean, whereas Chapter 1 concentrated on leverage in relationships. Unreturned favors, unbooked events, and unacknowledged calls seem to occur until the opportunity has passed. It's similar to a door that remains closed long enough to give the impression that nothing happened. The worst aspect is that none of it leaves fingerprints if you are the target. It indicates the bad luck of the damage. Because of this, he never approached this as a purely musical matter. If the consequences are not documented, neither can the replies. He responds to pressure by being present. In addition to the studio, additional locations where perspective is shaped include timelines, comment sections, rooms, and venues. He makes no secret of the fact that he takes a more thorough approach than most.
But your beef's not just on, wax. Your beef aren't just on record. Like, you know how to take yours to social media you buying tickets. You know what I'm saying? Like yours is just different.
It can be described in a different way. Multifront is another. Perception is the enemy. You must refute the viewpoint in which narratives are established if they are based on the errors of others. A 16-bar verse that only your core listens to can change a reputation as quickly as a post that makes 1 million people laugh. An aura can become a meme with a spectacular stunt. It is not required to eliminate a competitor. You just need to make him look smaller to the typical individual. Beneath that lies a colder calculation. In addition to being a weapon, attention may also be a shield. Ensure that viewers will want to watch it repeatedly. Nor are you merely taking a chance. Your base will love the story you're telling them. When the doors begin to squeak and the calls get strange, that matters. You cannot be eliminated by the behind-the-scenes activities if your people continue to turn up. It won't stop you, but it can slow you down. He also admits that his method was impolite. If you break the mold, you'll be labeled a bully, petty, cheesy, and over the top. He's heard it all, so he doesn't mind. The base is the only scoreboard he still pays attention to. The joke remains in the playbook if it keeps the base interested. It's strategy, not a bit, if it draws thousands of people to the turnstiles to see your next move. As a result, his tone remains consistent even when the inquiries become spectacular. He's not acting like meat is innocuous. He is keeping expense and noise apart. On the timeline, harassment is considered noise. You lose out on opportunities when you make quiet calls. It's merely noise when someone says you lost. An arena is a receipt if it consistently sells out. The article is therefore terminated. This is how he acts and arranges the chaos. However, Chapter 3 made that extremely evident. Some are viewed as competitors, crews with teeth, performers who are close to the audience, and locations where a song may feel like an address are examples of real places where other people's energy truly reaches. Jokes and tweets aren't the best options in certain circumstances. Then another factor comes into play. The disputes are ever-changing. How do you get ready for possible station departures? Without flinching, he responds. It sounds more like a checklist and less daring. Logistics are necessary for any long-term conflict. It's the difference between survival and vanity for him. He doesn't say anything when the topic shifts to what would happen if things became physical. He explains the setup.
Hey man, I was already in mode for that. Like the vehicles is bulletproof and bomb-proof and everything, and I'm like, what? I'm already geared up for the whole thing.
And it's not a joke. It's a rule. You can't expect peace if you think the seat is a focus of contention. You prepare for the impending storm, unaffected by gunfire, ready and bomb-proof. The verbs used here are logistical rather than romantic. Armor isn't something you buy to appear tough. In order for the van to reach the next city and for the people who rely on you to get paid on Friday, you purchase armor. There is another layer to the idea. Avoidance. Debate can take place on Twitter. You don't fight when you have glass that can't break. Preparation is what distinguishes a footnote from a headline when a rumor becomes the wrong block at the wrong time. This isn't crazy to someone who has seen mayhem, rooms change, and allegiances fall apart. It's governance again. It also explains why there is silence in previous chapters. When a man is ready, he doesn't waste air. You solve for storms if the seat is the cause. After that, you can choose to speak. You don't need to communicate your feelings in order to continue to rise. We also make it all the way to the base, which is the only scoreboard that matters. Records are not sold by Armor. Armor enables the sale of recordings. His ability to travel across a city, perform, leave, and return the following evening. That is the unspoken main idea of the story. If you can't be there in person, then all the games of perception, temperature, timing, comedy, and limitation are pointless. He shrugs when someone in the comments section reduces the matter to a dispute. The vehicle is already stronger. The itinerary has already been printed. In the calendar, the basis is already shown. He doesn't want to wait to figure out whether the internet is moving. He is ensuring that the bus departs on schedule. What's the conclusion? Perhaps it doesn't. His telling may be the point. No judge's bell, no tribunal, no final handshake. A base, a seat, and emotion are present. As long as those continue, so will the weather. The solution is to keep going. A scorecard of disc recordings is the most basic version of this rivalry. The real one is a lesson on government. Keep your base intact. Arrange the board, regulate the temperature, and pick your moments. The physics remains the same, but the name changes. He presents the guidelines in a way that is nearly monotonous. The first lines are drawn by allegiance. Leverage controls who answers the phone. Being silent can be a tactic. You might not be seeing things clearly. And you pose the question that puts an end to the dispute when everyone yells that you lost. What did you lose? The base remains in the room, and the throne remains stationary if no response is received. The strategies are characterized as rude, overbearing, and trivial along the way. He doesn't recoil. Stunts and jokes are not ornaments. They are instruments for breaking misconceptions. There is a great deal of pressure behind the scenes. Being prepared is also essential. Invincible, they are prepared and bomb-proof for continuity, not for theatricality. It makes sense that there would be silence as the Summer Jam rumors started to circulate. The wait before the joke is spoken, the discipline before a name is spoken. It's not arbitrary. This man has created a life that is resilient to storms since he is aware that the seed will arrive with them. There's no need for the truth. There is no need for a verdict. The verdict is the base. The move conveys the message. You've not only made it through the battle, but you've also figured out how to manage it if you're still here, selling, and laughing as the weather changes. Punch finished a 50-verse narrative. When shaking hands, the jaw does not close. On the route to the next city, it ends with the door closing. The chair is still in use. The bass continues to play, and there was never a blip on the one scoreboard that mattered.